Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast.
Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Mark Weinstein. Mark Weinstein is a renowned tech entrepreneur, contemporary thought leader, privacy expert, and one of the visionary inventors of social networking. His adventure in social media has lasted over 25 years through 3 award-winning personal social media platforms enjoyed by millions of members worldwide. He's the author of the new book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, a revolutionary social framework on the future of social media, which web inventor Sir Tim Berners-Lee calls a vital read, and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak calls a must-read. A leading privacy advocate, Mark's landmark 2020 TED Talk, The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism, exposed the many infractions and manipulations by big tech and called for privacy revolution. Mark has also been listed as one of the top 8 minds in online privacy and named Privacy by Design Ambassador by the Canadian government. Well, good afternoon, Mark. Welcome to the show.
Brian, great to be here. This is such an important conversation, always is, and you're the man. So let's have at it.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And hailing out of LA, I'm in Kansas City. We're just a couple of hours apart. So I appreciate you moving your schedule around because I know you did quite a few interviews today already. So Mark, let's jump right in. You're credited with holding 13 U.S. patents focused on privacy and data anonymization, the cornerstone of what you call restoration networking. How did these patents influence the development of your later ventures like MeWe, and how do they reflect your philosophy of user-centric design?
You know, for our listeners, listen, guys, I have a patent portfolio assigned to MeWe, which is the last company that I founded. I'm currently on the board of MeWe. I no longer run the company. I left in 2021 to write the book, Restoring Our Sanity Online. Those 13 patents are very specifically focused on data anonymization and personalized marketing. So way back in 2012, when everybody was focused on how do we slurp data, how do we grab everybody's data, I was focused on how do we protect everybody's data? How do we make sure that Facebook isn't seeing everything that I'm doing and then, targeting and manipulating my thoughts, my purchase decisions, my emotions, my critical thinking, my votes. And at this point, the portfolio has expanded to 13. I think a 14th just got approved. And so it's really that my thinking that brought me to the IP. Because I was curious. I was interviewed on Fox Business the day before Facebook went public. I'm saying Facebook now because it was Facebook before it was Meta. And this is back in 2012. And the reason that I was interviewed on Fox was at the time and still a major broadcast network was because I was the guy willing to say, this is creepy. If I post that, I need to go get some dog food, and then 10 seconds later, there's a dog food ad, my brand, the brand that I'm getting, that is just out of control creepy, and you can't see the creep over your shoulder. This is wrong. We got to do something about it. So I said that on Fox. I launched MeWe, a social network in Web 2, and I began looking at the intellectual property and how we could actually craft systems that serve digital marketers while protecting us and our privacy and our data. So that's how it started.
Amazing. And I appreciate that you're such an advocate for protecting people's privacy. When people were looking at maybe growth and revenue and these other things, especially the big tech companies, you were looking at data anonymization and privacy, which I think is really important. And you did highlight that. So Mark, your TED Talk, The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism, was a clarion call for change in how big tech operates. Looking back, what trends have you seen shift or remain stubbornly stubborn in surveillance capitalism since that talk?
And you see, that's really what we're talking about. So Web 1, and I'm one of the early founders of social networking. There's probably about 100 of us around the world who were either collaborating or individually or with our own teams launched products. I launched superfamily.com and superfriends.com. In the 90s, they became PC Magazine top 100 sites. Web 1 was beautiful because we weren't thinking about bots and trolls. We weren't thinking about targeting and manipulating users or, adjusting and filtering news feeds based on an algorithm of what we wanted them to see, what we wanted to sell to them. So Web 1 was beautiful. Web 2, which launches sort of as after Web 1, which Google is part of and was helped launch, and Facebook. Web 2 was surveillance capitalism. This was the new revenue model, monetizing our data, targeting, manipulating us, as I said, our thoughts, our purchase decisions, our votes, our emotions. So my TED Talk in 2020, The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism, really calls for all of us to be accountable for what sites we're on, how we allow people to use our data, how to protect our data. And unfortunately, Web 2 has been stubborn because Web 2 has massive revenue. Facebook became Meta and Google became this huge monopoly. Meta became a huge monopoly. The federal government has tried to, now break them up or limit them or interfere with them because the free market has stopped functioning. And that's our big issue. The free market doesn't function anymore in big tech. And when the free market stops functioning, in other words, when Brian, you or I, or any of our listeners, any great or new entrepreneur comes up with a great new way to craft a social media platform that is respectful and mindful of users and their data and makes the users the customers to serve, not the product to sell, there's no room for them because Meta controls what's called the network effect, your social graph. You're stuck right there, and they've interfered with any other competitors. Google, same thing, interfered with any other possible search engine competition. So we've been in this sort of stubborn moment for several years now, and there's hope, everybody. There's a light. And in my book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, we're going to talk about how we get there, and we're really right at the door.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, your advocacy for this is just so important. It's really coming out. I can hear your passion. Back in Web 1 days, I'll just highlight your social channels there of super family, super friendly. Web 2 is where things really started to change. In your TED Talk on Web 2's surveillance capitalism, you call for people to come together, be mindful, be alert, be aware. But this free market is essentially stopped functioning with big tech, as you mentioned. This is a big problem. Over the years, the U.S. government has broken up a lot of monopolies over the past 150 years. But this is definitely a problem. And the other thing is, and I'll just throw this in there is a backdoor channel with some of these companies to the U.S. government and some of the spying that goes on, not just the capitalism part, right? But also some of that spying that does kind of feel creepy. So I appreciate you unpacking all that for us. And Mark, in your book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, you advocate a new category called restoration networking, complete with a 13-point restoration networking constitution. What inspired this framework, and which tenets do you believe are most critical and hardest to implement?
Coming back for a moment to the idea in Web 2 when I launched MeWe, the idea of a privacy bill of rights, the idea of no manipulated news feeds. These are really important tenets to take hold of for the future. So when we look at now, how do we do this? Also, everybody. So here's what's happening. There's momentum, and Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, has gotten back in the game. And Tim calls my book, by the way, a vital read. Its vision, which I share, is a digital future that prioritizes human well-being. This is a vital read. That's Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Well, Tim has worked on a new system called Solid wallets, Solid pods, where we get to control our data in a decentralized way. We get to decide what sites have it, what sites don't. We get to upload, download. This is critical. It really is the functional tool of what's called data portability or data interoperability. Those mean the same thing, where we own our data and we can upload it, for example, to Meta or download it away from Meta and move to a site that better serves us and our social graph. Right now, our social graph is stuck on places like Meta, who have, half the world's population. And so this is where the Restoration Networking Constitution that I talk about in the book, and by the way, the book, I think everybody would be very entertained by this book because I have a great sense of humor and I fact check everything, which fact checking is its own issue, which I'll discuss in the book. When we talk about profit sharing, safeguarding kids, user ID verification for kids while protecting whistleblowers and marginalized people. On social networks, we've got to protect our kids. We've got to protect the future of democracy. Civil moderation, open source. We can get rid of bots and trolls, guys. It's not hard. While protecting privacy, you got to get rid of boosted content or targeting, unless you're opting into it and you're revenue sharing. So this thing I just call data portability, and paying it forward. Listen, it's all doable. Social media, I love social media. I'm one of the guys who invented it. One of. We can fix this mess. And Webs 1 and 2 don't do it. Web 3, by the way, Brian, we want to quickly touch on Web 3 because it's an important part of your question. So why don't you frame one for me?
Absolutely. Mark, my last question for you then is with this rapid rise of AI, Web3, and evolving regulatory landscapes, what keeps you hopeful and what worries you about the future of social media? How does your vision of restoring digital sanity account for these emerging forces?
So, thank you, Brian. The Web3, and for users who aren't really aware of it, it's built. Blockchain is the technology, and cryptocurrency is the modus operandi. It's how the revenue model works. Creating cryptocurrencies and having them become valuable, and the transactions therein that provide revenue for the sites. The Web3, the promises of Web3 were flawed. And we've seen this. There have been many social media efforts at Web3 that have failed, and this has gone on for 7 or 8 years now, from Minds to Steemit to Voice and others. So the promise of Web3, your pure anonymity, forget it. You're totally connected to anything you post to the blockchain. Your ID is always connected to it, so forget anonymity there. And Web3, the blockchain can't function at a high pace for tens of millions of users in a social media environment. Blockchain is great for financial transactions and things like that, but it doesn't really work for social. So we look at, and then the world of AI. We know algorithms have been around manipulating our news feeds and our thoughts and our purchase decisions for well over a decade now. But now they're supercharged by AI, everybody. So when you're stuck on your feed, whether you're on the proverbial toilet or it's your uncle, your grandpa, or your kid, you're just stuck wherever you are because AI is masterfully in nanoseconds manipulating your brain to want to see what's next and then want to engage with whatever it feeds you next. It's incredible how strong AI is and how manipulative it is. The good news is AI has a good counterpart. AI is like two sides of a coin. So we can use good AI. We can use it very effectively to weed out bots and trolls. My book has a 7-point plan for bot and troll eradication, which we all really need. Free speech depends on real people speaking, not nefarious entities and, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of bots and trolls manipulating our thoughts and our conversation. It's got to be real people. The backbone of democracy is disagreement, guys. We're supposed to disagree, but we like each other. Here in America, the whole point is we can disagree with our neighbors, but we like each other. That's the purpose of democracy. That's the beauty of democracy. So I worry about all this being pigeonholed into thoughts and ideas and political beliefs based on bots and trolls perpetrating instead of real conversations with real people. I worry about the future of social media if we don't get data portability, if we don't get user ID verification for our kids to protect them from being targeted, manipulated, etc. We can really fix this and quickly. We have hope in the Kids Online Safety Act, KOSA, which is in Congress. It's bipartisan. We have hope in COPPA 2, Kids Online Privacy Protection Act. There's hope. We have the Take It Down Act, which was signed into law this year. And we now need to free up the free market. The Federal Trade Commission is getting ready to rule in its case against Meta, the antitrust social media case. And I've been deposed. I've been subpoenaed. I've issued declarative statements. I have a lot of comments on record in the case. And I'm hopeful that one way or the other, data portability is coming. User ID verification for kids in social media is coming. We also need that on YouTube, by the way, because there are slippery slopes everywhere. YouTube, TikTok. We've got to protect our kids. So I am actually very hopeful. And in restoring our sanity online, I articulate exactly how we can do this right now. So everybody, we're all part of the solution. And now it's time to get to it.
Thank you. That's amazing. Again, a lot to unpack, but I'll just highlight a few things here. Yeah, Web3 blockchain, there's a lot of promise. It does a lot of great things, but right now they're still working on that throughput for blockchain, as you mentioned. Putting a social network, a popular social network on blockchain could kind of choke up and die there quickly. I know they're working on it though.
Let me interject right here, which also for our users. The idea of Web3 is monetizing your social relationships, and this is a fundamental flaw. This is why the previous companies have attempted this and failed, because at scale, human beings don't want their communications to be monetized. We want to communicate authentically, and the monetization puts a real heavy cheapening overlay on it. That's also why Web3 for social isn't working. Please go ahead.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I really do. Just highlight some of the most important things, though, is AI is out there. There's a lot of bots being very manipulative, and I know AI can also combat a lot of that. And I agree with you, Mark. Been around the block a few years like yourself, and we should have a friendly discourse in our disagreements. But these bots are really dividing and making a big division between the different views within this country and within the world. But what I heard, data portability is coming and better age verification and protection for our kids, which I think is important. So thank you. And Mark, it was such a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Thank you, Brian. We can do this, everybody. And we can have a great back to the beginning of social. It was great. It made the world more harmonious. It connected us with our family, friends, and like-minded people around the world. This is where we want to get to.
Bye for now.